Hi, everyone. Welcome to the Park Howell Show, Business of Story. Hey, I'm using this new tool today, Be Live, and it seems like it's pretty cool. I'm hoping it's working. Give me a shout out there if you can see me and things are going. This is going to be a lot of fun. We are going to be working through it. Today is the third show in the Business of Story show. And look, at behind me, I've got our friend Hazel. She's tuning in today as well. Great to have her along for a little bit of moral support, and really wonderful having you all here. This is show 3 in our story cycle process. We have been taking you through this. A couple weeks ago, we talked about the backstory. What is your number one position in the marketplace? What is it that you do functionally better than anybody else? See, I think she's getting a little bit bored back there, but we're going to keep this thing rolling. Number 2, hero. Who's your audience? Who are you talking to? I had a wonderful conversation with Greg Head, the former head of marketing for Infusionsoft that helped grow that company from 15 million to 100 million. He's going to be on Business of Story podcast in a couple weeks, so stay tuned for that. I'll shoot a link out. But he and I spoke an awful lot about those first 2 steps, getting razor focused in who you are and what you're about, what you do better than anybody else, and then who cares? Who is your audience? So today we're going to be talking about what's at stake. What's at stake for you? And this is going to work in a number of different levels. What's at stake for you and your brand? So you have your short, medium, long-term goals. What's at stake for your customers to get them involved? And then the final question we have in this is what's at stake? What do they stand to gain by coming on board with you? And what do they stand to lose or miss out on by doing nothing, by remaining in status quo? So that's really important. Now, earlier this week, I had the honor of being out at the Green Biz 17 conference that's here. I think it was this 5th annual conference here in Arizona. I did moderated a panel on Monday afternoon about storytelling within the circular economy. And if for those of you not in the sustainability world, a circular economy is an economy where your manufacturers focus on using and reusing and reusing and reusing the same natural products that go into creating a product that we all purchase, that we put on and we're living through and living in and whatever, but then we return it back to the circular economy to be reused again. The idea is to keep things out of landfills. Anyways, long story short, I had the real benefit of working alongside the head of sustainability for Procter & Gamble, the head of sustainability for UPS, and my new good friend, Jeff Wooster, the head of sustainability over packaging for Dow Chemical, and we had this. And then the second day, we did a half-day session all about our Executive Master's Program at sustainability at school at ASU. Let me say that again. All about the Executive Masters for Sustainability Leadership at Arizona State University. Anyways, a couple days after that, I was sitting in and I was listening to like 3 really bright folks. These are the folks that are heading up communications for SC Johnson, for sustainability for McDonald's, and sustainability for eBay. And I tell this because they set up the really great people talking about what they do, and it was all about trust, building trust. And to me, I think the title of it was like, the importance of trust in your organization. And that's to me a little bit like the importance of air for breathing. You don't have to have an hour and a half plenary session on the importance of air. We know it's important. And I'm hoping people know that trust is absolutely important for your brand, no matter what kind of world you're in. So they focus a long time on trust. And when I asked the lady from SC Johnson about what do they do with storytelling, do they have an intentional process within the organization? She said, well, we're all storytellers here at SC Johnson. That's exactly, why we have grown for 131 plus years, because we're all storytellers. And I beg to differ on that. I think we're all innate storytellers, but I think very few of us use it in the business world. And I didn't really see her using it very much too. And give you an example. When she was talking about building trust within the organization, she said, do you realize that in our production lines all around the world, that we give authority to any single person on that production line to shut it down if they find a defect? And then she had this little proviso. They might not be able to shut it down right away, but they do have this authority to shut it down if they have if they see a defect. Therefore, that builds trust within our organizations. Well, that is not a story. She is just communicating a fact. That is not a story. So we all sit there going, okay, yeah, whatever, what's next? But how much more powerful would it have been if she said, well, one ways we build trust, let's talk about James in Oxnard. I'm just making this up. James was on our floor polish line in Oxnard 2 months ago. And he found a can that came through, or a bottle, that there was a defect in the bottle. And then he found that there was a next one. And then there was another one. And we started finding splinters of glass. Now, again, I'm just totally making this up. And James shut down that production line because he had the authority to do so. He was all about the quality of our product, and he wanted to make sure that we were only putting out the best. So he shut down that production line in Oxnard, California 2 months ago. Do you realize that we have over 25,000 Jameses on production lines around the world, and each and every one of them has the authority to shut down a production line? That's how we build trust in our company. See, that's a story. And so we all so often get caught up in, we tell stories, we're business storytellers, but you know what? We're not. We're not actually engaging the right side of our brain, our hearts, to go out and tell that story. That's my mission. My mission is to help you live into your most powerful stories. And that's why we use the story cycle system to do that, because it makes you very intentional. You literally have to go in and fill in the blanks. And in doing so, it creates a natural story. Now, what did my story have that hers did not? Well, it had a time a couple months ago. It had a place, Oxnard, California, on a production line. It had a character to it, James. Again, I just totally made this up. It had action to it. He found fault within the production line, so he was empowered to be able to shut that down right then and there, despite the cost of the organization, to ensure the quality of that product. And by the way, we now scale that story. We have 25,000 Jameses around the world that have that same authority, and it has a business point. We build trust within SC Johnson because we empower those to make the right decisions on your behalf every day, day in, day out. Despite our global reach, they can do it in that micro moment. That, my friends, is a story. So are you telling stories, or are you just telling sort of aside facts? And if you're telling just sort of aside facts in this land of abundance we live in, your stories are dying because they're not actually existing. So what's at stake today? What's at stake today is to make sure you are telling stories. Stories have a time, they have a place, they have a character, they have action. You want to increase that action, and they have a business point. That's what's at stake. So with the story cycle process, now that you have kind of figured out who your number one audience is by, understanding, what your number one thing you do better than anybody else by determining your backstory. Who cares? Who's your number one audience? Let's talk about what's at stake in your story. Every story has to have defined stakes, and that includes your brand story strategy. So here's the fun and interesting thing about this process is story is a fractal of itself, meaning this happens in very small moments. This happens in very medium, average moments, and it happens in very epic journeys. So you can use this process to create your brand story strategy. And if that's what you're doing it for right now, then use the stakes. I'm looking for my pen here to determine what are your top three goals. What is a short-term goal? What is a medium-term goal? And what is a long-term goal? And be very specific about it. Our son, who is an aspiring musician in electronic dance music, he has a goal of releasing his very first track. And I think it's actually going out today, but he put a hard set goal to it of 2/17/17. Today, February 17th, 17, because it had a nice ring to him, but it gave him something to shoot for. So I want to know here, what are your, I'm missing that camera, short, medium, and long-term goals for your story strategy? Now, the really cool thing about this, because it's a fractal, your audiences have goals too, and the more you can understand what they care about in relation to what you offer and what their goal is, even a short, medium, and long-term goal, the better storytelling you can do. So this becomes a fractal. I want you to think about your audience's backstory. Where have they been? Where are they going? Where are they now? What do they care about as an audience member? And when you get over here to the stakes side, What is it that they want from you, short, medium, and long term? By the way, as we continue working through the story cycle process, this keeps flowing and it keeps rolling around, and that's your audience's story. Quite often, you'll have to first get your employees on board with a new brand story strategy. So you want to understand, what is their story? What is their backstory? What are they coming from, and what stories are they already telling about yourself? You want to learn who they are within the organization, what kind of influence do they wield, and who and what influences them, because you want to tell stories from their perspective. Then you want to be sure that you truly understand what's at stake for them. How can you help them get what they want in your story, in your initiative, with your brand? And then once you achieve that with them, they will go out of their way to help you get what you want. By the way, their story cycle process follows the same thing. You can use this, as we showed you last week too, in creating customer personas. When you sit down and understand who your customer is, write a persona using these same 10 steps. It really informs the journey that they are on, so that you know where to connect the important elements of your story with theirs. So it's all about what's at stake in your story. First, answer the 3 questions with your brand story strategy. What are your short-term goals? Maybe that's just simply getting more people to your website. Maybe there's a conversion metric in there and whatever. And by when do you want to do that? What's a medium-term goal? What does that conversion look like, and how is it now starting to play into funding, a revenue for you, and whether it's an online world or you're selling a product and so forth? And then what's your long-term goal? How can you start turning them into story evangelists for you? In essence, you now, as the brand, become the story maker. You hand it off to them, and they become the storyteller on your behalf up here in the ritual section. But you can't get there unless you know where you're going and what's at stake and when you're going to dial that in. Here's the other thing I want you to think about in this. I want you to think about, and this is really important, we often look at an audience about what do they stand to gain by buying into our program. What is it that they stand to gain? Well, I want you to also think of, what do they stand to lose or lose out on or miss because they're staying in status quo? Some of your stories are going to be as important to talk about that than it is just about what they're going to gain. So maybe it is, we talked about tax preparation. It's on top of my mind because we're going through that season. If you use an H&R Block, what do you stand to gain? You get their authority, you get their wisdom, you've got someone who's on your side by helping you do that. But if you choose to do it yourself, what do you stand to lose or staying at status quo? Well, you stand to lose their wisdom. You stand to lose, their help in getting you through. But you also may be gaining some frustration. So you do stand to losing your frustration. That's the kind of thing I want you to think about. And when someone is buying in your product, what do they stand to gain by getting it? What's at stake there? And more importantly, or as importantly, I should say, what do they stand to lose by remaining in status quo? Now, if I hearken back to my experience earlier this week at the Green Biz Conference, one of my biggest angst in the world of sustainability, and I do a lot of work in that area, in environmental work and social cause work and whatnot, that it's moving slowly because I think the thought leaders aren't using story. They're trying to use facts, stats, and rationale as to why we should be doing this, when they should really be wrapping all that stuff. They're all important, by the way, facts, the stats, the rationale. I'm not talking about alternative facts. I'm talking about the science. Critical, hugely important, but it needs to be wrapped in story and delivered in story. So what's more powerful to you? To listen how a company builds trust by being able to allow everybody on a production line to shut it down whenever they want? Okay, that's kind of nice. Or to actually take me through vivid language and vivid storytelling to that production line, so I could see James in his action actually doing the thing we've given him permission to. And why that works is because we get to live vicariously through James. Now, we may not have shut down a production line on a major company. However, we've all been there when we've had to make that choice. Do I make the right choice and stop what I'm doing right now on behalf of myself or my company or whatever? Or do I take the easy way out, turn, look the other way, and not do anything? So we get to live vicariously through James. We've been there. We get to connect a story that we've experienced to the story they're telling us. And now, all of a sudden, this whole concept of selling me on the trust within an organization has true meaning for me. I get to live, vicariously through it. I get viscerally, it touches me because story. So ask yourself, how well are you using story? Now I've got a special thing for you. When I keep going through my story cycle process, and I'm really happy with this, it's fun, it's sort of academic, it takes you a deep dive. I've got a very simple thing for you. This is the 10 fundamental questions to help you own your personal or professional brand story to grow your influence and to grow your brand. Now, I've got a link on the website. Jump over to a blog post I've written over there called the 10 Quick Questions to Help You Own Your Brand Story. You can read through that. We have the questions right there, and you can start filling in those blanks. And what's nice about that is when you do that, fill in those 10 blanks, and when you're starting to really apply the story cycle process to your world, you've got a nice foundation for it. You've got a place to go, a simple way that you are going to now expound on as you run through all the different steps of the story cycle process. So that's it for today. What's at stake in your journey? Go and check out this free tool sitting over there. Just read through the blog post. It's going to take you through each one of these 10 steps. If you would like me to email you a copy of this, shoot me a note here on Facebook or shoot me a note over at park@businessofstory.com, and I'll be happy to send that out to you. Let's see. What else have we got going here? Oh, I want to remind you, I will be working through the entire story cycle system at Social Media Marketing World. I'm so excited to be back for this year's show. I was there last year. We had over 600 people in attendance for the workshop. It was great fun. And I really want to say thanks again to Michael Stelzner and Phil Mershon for bringing me back in. I'm so looking forward. I've added some new tools and some tweaks, some techniques within the system, but I am literally going to take you step by step through the story cycle process in 90 minutes. You'll be there. It's going to be very hands-on, very interactive. You literally will be able to start writing your brand story as we go through this. And when you leave that session, my promise to you is I am going to reignite within you the one true superpower we all possess, and that's the power of storytelling to grow your personal brand influence and or to grow your company through your brand story. So that's it for me today. Did I wake Hazel up? Look at her. No, I think I put her out. But great having her along. Do you have any questions? The question I would send out to you right now is what's at stake in your story? Can you identify right now what's either at stake for you to get your brand story straight, or maybe you're already there, and what's at stake for your customers that are you selling to what they can gain, or are you selling against their anti-story of, I don't think I need it right now? That is what they lose or miss out on by not jumping on board. So who do we got? Hey, Teresa, great having you on board. Any ideas? Wonderful photographer up in the Pacific Northwest. As you all know, she did some shoots for me, headshots for me earlier. Teresa, great to have you here. Do you have any questions? And I'm just learning how to do this. I love this little click that I can show, and they pop up on there. It's pretty cool. How about Lisa? Thanks for coming along. Lisa's my help. Lisa's over at Influence Management Services. She helps me pull all this stuff off. She's given you the link there to go and check out the 10 questions, quick questions to ask yourself to get your brand story straight. John, let's see, who else? Thinking. I was working with a guy, a good friend of mine. I will withhold the name last night. We were just having a beer, and he's a very well-connected individual here in the Phoenix area. And we were working on his story. I mean, he didn't want to. I couldn't help myself. I just jumped into the middle of it. But it's so important, when we are so focused on what we do, that when we talk about what we do better than anybody else and what's at stake for our customers, we tend to talk in gross generalizations. And I want you to get as specific about your story as you possibly can. So, in his case, I think it really boils down to he is a communications connector, that if you're coming into the Valley of the Sun and you need to connect with media, with other business professionals, or if you've got a crisis communication program, something in hand that you need help with, or if you want to avoid that and put together a crisis communications plan that will keep you out of hot water, this gentleman's a bit of a fixer in that area. He is a communications connector and can really give you voice in the Valley. I'm going to withhold his name, but if you're interested or need those services, let me know and I'll be happy to put you in touch. But this is a gentleman that has tremendous amount of experience, and we just had a hard time helping him get it down to what does it do? What does he do better than anybody else? And he can connect you with Valley leaders and Valley leaders in media to help make sure that your voice is heard in the Valley. That's what I'm talking about, is when you understand what you do better than anybody else, who cares, who your audience is, and what's at stake for them. Are you selling to what they can gain by getting involved with you, or are you selling against what they stand to lose by not getting involved with you? Both are really important stakes at hand. So, well, I guess that's it for me. Any other last questions before we sign off? Doesn't look like we're jumping on. Well, thank you so much for being here. This is my first BeLive session, and it looks pretty cool. I'm pretty happy with it all in all. And we will see you next Friday at 10 a.m. for another Park Howell Business of Story show. Thanks for being here.